Hello, and thank you for joining us. We're going to give it another minute or so until we get started. We're going to wait another 30 seconds before we get started. Thank you guys for carving out a portion of your day to join us. Going to wait for a couple more people to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, why don't we get started? We have a lot of material to cover, and I know we're expecting quite a few more people, but good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us. Thank you for joining the latest edition of the Winwire Microsoft ongoing webinar series on Gen AI. My name is Joe. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Winwire, and I will be moderating the discussion today. You see the title, Navigating the Future, an Exploration of Generative AI-Based Copilot Framework. I want to introduce our two presenters. We have Vineet Arora, who is the co-founder and chief technology officer of Winwire. And we also have Fouad Khoshwi, who is the senior machine learning solutions architect for Microsoft. If you've joined us in any of the previous webinar discussions, they've hosted a number of enlightening conversations on this topic in the past, and today will be no different. In terms of the agenda, we have really three parts to today's agenda. I'm going to turn it over to Fouad in a second. He is going to talk about Microsoft's Copilot platform. And then Vineet will cover Copilot framework overview. And then we'll finish up with some demos on some Copilot infused apps. Really looking forward to that part of it. And then we've allocated 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more, for Q&A. So if you would, raise your questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we will get to as many as we can towards the end. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to Fouad to get us started. Fouad, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Joe, for the intro and setting the stage for us. Let me start sharing my screen really quick. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes, we can, Fouad. Go ahead.
Awesome. Again, my name is Fouad. I'm a machine learning solution architect here at Microsoft. Happy to meet you all and talking to you and presenting to you about the era of Copilot. We all kind of know by now, I think, that the era of Copilot is here. And I would like to talk a little bit about the Copilot concept and its characteristics and capabilities. Copilots, I think the main feature of them is that they are conversational. So you could use Copilot to interact with some sort of backend system using natural language. And the Copilot is that interim layer between the human and the computer or the machines. Copilots are powered by foundational models. By foundation model, either the large language models or multimodal models. And those are the famous ones that we currently have in Azure, like the GPT 3.5 or ChatGPT and GPT-4. And I know many other companies are also building LLMs, and we are also continuing to update. And, this is an evolving domain. The copilots can be empowered to use skills. Essentially, the copilot can act as an agent, and it can be augmented by external skills or tools in order to interact with the outside world or with other capabilities that they naturally are not that good at. Examples are, for example, let's say you have a Copilot or a large language model that's acting as an agent. It kind of knows when to decide how to use other tools. But for example, if you ask it, how's the weather today in Paris or in Tokyo, that's not really part of its knowledge. It's more of a search problem. So if it has access to a Bing search, it can search that and then provide the answer to you. And you could think of that in multiple different ways of having access to tools. It can expand its capabilities. And the last thing is that copilots are aware of the environment surrounding them without explicitly being told. So if we combine all these different capabilities, essentially, we would have a very powerful copilot. At Microsoft, we are building multiple copilots within our own product offerings. For example, one of the earliest ones is the GitHub Copilot. I'm sure you're all familiar with, the capabilities of GitHub. These models have been further fine-tuned on code and are here to help generate code for your developer teams. And that's a efficiency boost. So here, for the example that we currently have, here, the person is only providing the comment on line 27. As soon as the comment is provided, the code is being generated by the copilot. And this is super powerful because you could use it to convert comments to code. You could autofill repetitive code. You could document code from, let's say, if you have some code that you want to generate documentation, or you could also maybe design some unit testing. So it's been a great tool. A lot of different customers and companies are currently using it, including our own development teams within Microsoft as well. And it's been a great boost for the developers and some of the, helping boost their efficiency. I want to play a little video here. That's the Copilot that we have within Power BI. And as you probably already know, Power BI is our platform for generating dashboards using data, visualizing and looking at different trends. But we have created a Copilot essentially within Power BI where you would be able to ask questions and generate those dashboards and reports seamlessly. So let me roll the video. Let me know if you can hear the sound by maybe a thumbs up.
Introducing the next generation of AI in Microsoft Power BI. Copilot in Power BI empowers your people to unlock the full potential of your data and move from data to insights faster. Now, with Copilot in Power BI, you can use natural language to bring your data to life. Simply describe the visuals and insights you're looking for, and next generation AI will create your report and help you refine it. You can then dig into this data further by asking a question, and Copilot will find the best answer. Not only does Copilot help you visualize your data, but it taps into Power BI's advanced analysis capabilities to help you find key influencers and outliers and create forecasts. Copilot can summarize your data into easy-to-understand text narratives that help others quickly get important and relevant insights. And for analysts who are creating calculations and modeling data, you can simply describe what you want, and the code is automatically generated. With Copilot in Power BI, turning data into impact has never been easier. Introduce.
Awesome. So that was the video around Copilot and what's coming into Power BI. But I wanted to expand that view and show you all the different Copilots we are building within our different products, including the GitHub Copilot up here. We discussed that, the Power BI, but also we are introducing the Copilot within Windows. Windows is the largest canvas. I think over 1 billion people use it. So you would be able to use Copilot within Windows if you want to change the settings, or if you want to check something about your computer, you'd be able to chat with it. It's currently also available in the Power Platform, where you would be able to chat to create different, for example, chatbots. And also it's available in our M365 offering. And M365 is inclusive of Teams, for example, where you would be able to, let's say someone just joins the call, maybe 15 minutes in, they would be able to ask what's been discussed so far, what are the action items, and what's been the summary. So in Teams, that's one of the use cases that's Copilot is going to provide. In, for example, PowerPoint, you could also ask it to generate slides. You could describe the slides that you need, and it can generate the slides for you. And in Word, it could suggest for you, for example, if you have a topic in mind, for example, it can generate the text that you have in mind. So essentially, and I think that the last one I need to also mention is the Microsoft Security Copilot, where it would be able to help you navigate all the security topics as well. So what I want to maybe point out here is at Microsoft, we are infusing all our different products with this technology of generative AI and building Copilot for every single one of them. At the same time, we offer the generative AI technology as a cloud company to our customers as well, for you all to build your own Copilots on your applications and for your specific use cases and your customer base and for your use cases and businesses. And also, that would add efficiency and additional productivity to your own applications. In order to build those Copilots within your stack of applications, I would say we have here our partner, Windwire, who would be able to help facilitate and drive those with you. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass it to Vineet here to show some of the use cases and Copilots that they have, and demo those and show you how you can take advantage of those and build yours.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to folks joining from across the globe. As Fuad mentioned, I think the platform that we are talking about out here is brought in by Microsoft, and who better to have somebody like Fuad give you a little bit of an overview about what the Copilot platform is all about. And you saw how Microsoft is going to have it as a part of all of their applications, all of the products that we all use on a day-to-day basis, be we are an information worker or a developer or any other role. What I want to talk about is the idea of Copilot and how do we take it to the next level is in your application itself. Just before that, I want to just set the context of, we have been doing at Windwire generative AI solutions for quite some time now. I know relatively the technology is newer from the early part of this year, but when you look at, both the opportunities and challenges on what does it take for building the generative AI solutions, right? Some of these are very, very clear, right? Prompts, right? Right now, yes, everybody writes prompts when you're using a chat GPT or something like similar app, but how do you make effective prompts? How do you do? So there is the whole, topic around prompt engineering. There are people who will be doing that, but what is it that you will focus on in terms of building the prompt, right? And automating it is very important. You, of course, look at the entire architecture that is required, the refinements that are required, because it's not a one-time done, right? And then there are all these activities that I've listed down at the bottom that are required for a Gen AI solution. Many of these are addressed by lots of tools, technologies that are available. What we want to talk about today is more focused on, the Copilot as a idea, right? So you heard about what Fuad mentioned about Copilot as a part of Microsoft products. What is a custom Copilot? The way I define it is that it's an application that uses modern UI to assist you with complex cognitive tasks as a part of your enterprise apps and products. The important point to note is that it is not ChatGPT. It is not a replacement of ChatGPT. It is not a copy paste of ChatGPT as a concept. It is doing a lot more than having a chat interface, right? It is a supporting app. It is also not an app that is just standalone, right? It is a supporting app, as you saw in the Power BI demo, and if you have looked at other demos for other products, right? Power BI is the core application, but the Copilot for Power BI is providing a chat-based interface where users can ask the Power BI platform to do something in terms of generating graphics, modifying the graphics and everything else. That's the user interaction that is required. It is not a standalone application, it's a primary application. And of course, it is always tied to a particular application or a screen or an action, right? Windows 11 Copilot probably is the only one that will be more generic in nature, because now you're operating at an operating system level. But we are not talking about that Copilot right now. All of those Copilots are the ones that will be enabled as a part of your platform, like an operating system or the Microsoft 365 or Power Platform or Power BI. What we are talking about is how do you take the same capability and build it into your application? And that's where the Copilot Stack framework comes into the picture. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes, walking you through what is this underlying set of technologies that is together called as the Copilot Stack framework. This is a service or a set of services that provides you, the capability to build your own Copilots, build your own plugins, as we will talk about more about that, and infuse that into your applications. Now, the underlying AI infrastructure, the foundational models are, of course, running on Azure, right? And we are not talking about that right here. We covered that in the last week's webinar, if some of you attended. If not, it'll be available as a recording on our website. What we are talking about out here is the core AI orchestration. But what is this entire stack helping us do? What it is actually helping you do is saving the time to automate the tasks that you require to do in your application using NLP, or in case of GitHub Copilot, using the code generation, right? I think the key point that I like to emphasize on is improving the quality and accuracy of your application experience. What we are talking about out here is people are going to use applications. How do you reduce training time? How do you improve the user experience of what they can do with the application? And the typical problem in any software application is people will use it the way they like to use it, not probably how you want them to use it. And how does the application adapt to that? When it is an NLP driven UI, right, people are going to ask it, and the application needs to be able to handle that request and modify its behavior through that. How does that happen, right? So if we dive a little bit deeper, double click onto this core that you saw as a part of the Copilot framework or Copilot stack, the core that I think you as the developers, you as the team that is designing this application, is to look at the AI orchestration layer, right? Foundational models are already provided. The data is already, enabled. We have talked about. I did a webinar about a few weeks ago where we talked about how can you connect foundational models to your enterprise data. That's also a webinar that has been delivered. So I'm not covering those topics out here. There are questions, we will be able to happy to answer that. But we are talking about the core AI orchestration layer, right, which has everything that is required to manage state, because it's an application. You are not just doing chatting and then getting out of it. How do you build a UI UX? How do you interact with the underlying models? And what do you do actually with using the plugins, which is the side effects that I talk about, is when something is asked, how does it actually get impacted into the core application? Right? That is the most important part of it. What are the tools and the technologies that are enabling these activities, right? If I double click again on in a different manner to the AI orchestration layer, one of the key important tools that many of us, may have seen it. If not, I'll talk about that, is this engine called the prompt flow management. This is becoming a part of, or it has already become a part of the Azure's machine learning platform. That is where, as I talked about in the beginning, one of the core things is everything to do with prompt management, right? Prompt engineers will require a tool, and that is the tool that we are talking about, including some content safety, AI, responsible AI related aspects that you will infuse into the entire management of the prompts and the output that is given. As if you have looked at, how do you sort of start building additional capabilities, there is this concept of meta prompts that is very, very critical and important, because what users asks needs to be always infused with additional information that will be used to process using the LLM, using the foundational models that we're talking about. Data grounding and plugin executions are also part of the AI orchestration. We have talked about some of those things in the data grounding, where you can use an Azure cognitive search and its index or vector database mechanisms to store your enterprise data and make sure that your application are only limiting your responses to that particular data. But plugin execution is what is core to one of the core other elements of the Copilot application is you will need to build plugins for either the application for which you are tying Copilot, or if you are also fetching information from, let's say, an external application, right, an external website, which of course has its own APIs. That's what we talk about plugins. The typical example that I'm sure all of you who have been using ChatGPT, now there are so many plugins that you can add, from linking to Shopify to OpenTable to many of those. It's essentially a framework which allows you to securely and in a managed manner call those APIs, get the responses, and integrate it into your application. The same framework that is used right now to build those plugins for ChatGPT are also the framework that we're talking about for the Copilot applications. Right, Microsoft has standardized on that framework. That particular approach of how do you build plugins is available on Git, and you can look at building those plugins. What I want to talk a little bit more about is the prompt flow. Before we do that, right, this is an important topic that everybody should be very familiar with, is everything to do with retrieval augmented generation. Right, that's exactly what we are doing. Right, this is what is an important element, and prompt flow is the engine that is simplifying the implementation of this RAG model, right? That is an important element. So if I double click on that, what happens in an LLM solution and a Gen AI solution, right? You will look at starting with a business case identification. You will collect some sample data. You will also look at, okay, what are the basic prompts that will work for my application, right? And then the core comes in is a developer a machine learning developer in this particular case, will start to develop that flow based upon, based upon all this learning to extend the capability of your application. One of the strong points we recommend based upon our learnings over the last few months of working these solutions is always have an experimentation phase. Why? Because however better you may do in terms of forming your prompts, right? There is still experimentation that you have to do using those prompts against your data and do it in an iterative fashion. So as you see on the second box, right, you run that prompt flow that you build using Machine Learning Studio against your sample data, evaluate those prompts, and then continue that till the time you're satisfied. And when you put it into the next stage, when you're satisfied with that, you still require it to work against a larger data set, because experimentation means you're working with probably a smaller data set, right? A few hundred or maybe 1,000 records or something like that. But and all of these capabilities are available in the prompt flow engine, right? Prompt flow tool, where you will be able to then work against the larger data set, make sure that the prompts are again becoming better, the entire flow is becoming better. Once you actually feel comfortable as a team, again, this is not an individual task, right? There will be business analysts involved, there will be machine learning developers involved, there will be application architects who will be involved, right? Then you look at deploying it into production. And essentially, as I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, you are adding this as an add-on capability to the existing application, or maybe an application that you're building. One of the examples that I talk about that many people can relate to is few years ago, we used to build applications, no matter what language, what technology we use, right? And they were targeted primarily for a desktop or a laptop-based interface. When mobility became, absolutely an essential need for application, right? It became a part of your entire software development lifecycle. Before that, right, for almost maybe I would say an year or 2 years that I saw that applications existed, and then you had to build bolt-on features to enable them to be mobile enabled, right? So you will either do HTML5 based applications, or you will build native applications, and then tied to that, people will have different experiences when they are on the application in the desktop or on the mobile app. Same thing is happening out here in Copilot. Today, the Copilot, where it is in terms of its maturity model for building into your application, is you're adding it as a support application. What I foresee is that in the very near future, right, every application that you're thinking about would have this as a core set of features and capabilities that will be designed and architected from the initial stage itself. It's not going to be an afterthought. Today it is an afterthought, but that's going to be there, and there are tools to enable that, right? As I was talking about, and this is the same flow that I just talked about, prompt flow tool, which is part of the Machine Learning Studio, right, enables you to manage this entire flow. And this is the heart of the matter, because ultimately the applications are going to react, right? The core functionality of the application is already there, right? That you're attaching your Copilot to. But what you are going to do is, how do you understand the natural language that has been natural language based prompt that has been asked by the user, right, and allow that to be processed by the application, which is the underlying Copilot, right? This is something that is in preview mode. If you do not have access to it, but if you are a machine learning developer, or you know anybody in your team who is a machine learning developer, ask them to go to the Machine Learning Studio in the Azure platform, and you can request access to this preview feature, which will allow you to then experiment and build those. And when it is going to be available for full-fledged usage, of course, you can continue to build on top of that. That will be available out here. One last sort of slide that I want to talk about is, okay, how do you actually use it when you get access to it, right? The tool is going to, I talked about these 4 stages, right? Initialization, experimentation, evaluation, refinement, and production, right? That is an important element for you to focus on. Identify the business use cases, collect your sample data and everything else. And this is the flow that is very, very critical for you to design and implement the Copilot. I'm going to also, sort of show you is, okay, Copilot is one sort of the critical element of Gen AI solutions. As we are working with the customers, what we are seeing is they always start with some kind of an envisioning phase. They look at those intelligent cloud apps, which are infused with Gen AI. And the ultimate goal, in my opinion, is that various solutions, various applications, which are going to be enterprise solutions, or if you're a product company and you're building product for your end customers, you are going to infuse them with Copilot kind of an application, Copilot kind of a features, right? And it will, in the very near future, as I said, it will become an integral part of every application that is going to be out there, is that you can interact with it using the natural. So what does it look like, right? Let me show you an example that I will walk you through, and then we will show you the architecture also. That will give you a little bit of a preview of that. So I showed you the Copilot Stack, which is the overall logical architecture of the technologies that are involved. The application that I'm going to show you, this is the underlying architecture for that. So if you see on the right side, you still have your presentation layer, your business logic layer, and data access layer. The one in the black box or the black box that you see out here is your existing application, right? You're not really touching that. What you are building is a Copilot application, which, as I talked about, is a supporting application, which has the NLP-based interface, which has a chat-based interface. You build the user query, right? You go through this entire, processing of, okay, what is the user trying to do? Go through this entire processing of, meta prompting, building the prompt, processing it. Maybe there is, of course, your data, underlying data, where the prompts are stored, meta prompts are stored, your data from which you need to form the responses are stored. And then the core is the plugin. The plugin is the one that does the action to change something in this particular application. And what is that action, right? This number 7 that you see, what is this action really doing, like response and action? So one is a response. It will say, I have updated so-and-so, but also it's doing an action by making a call to fetch something from the underlying data access layer or underlying database, or executing some business logic layer on your behalf, right? Users are still able to do that using the application UI, but you are now basically changing the experience to make it natural language processing, right? So I think a visual representation of that would be much better. What you see on the left side of the application, if you ignore this Copilot, right, is more to do with a traditional application, which has a table, which has some numbers as a dashboard being shown. It has a search capability. It's basically used to schedule service for an automobile, right? And then there is an action out here called book an appointment, right? Now, if I didn't have the Copilot, which is what we have built this application, I could click as a user, book an appointment, and go through the step like I typically would do. Think about new workforce, new people coming in, and how they are very used to the NLP mechanism, how you could replace that activity, right? And this is just an example. There are lots of possibilities, right? And what I would actually do is actually start immediately with, maybe show me available service slots for tomorrow. So instead of saying book appointment, which is one traditional way of looking at it, the way it happens is maybe the customer calls the contact center and says, I need to get my car or my vehicle for service. Okay. And instead of saying I book appointment and go through a lot of stuff, this is a different experience, right? If I say show me available service slots for tomorrow, right? As I said, one, you will have to provide a response, right? So it provides a response in your NLP, but see what happens. It also changes the application UI on the left side to actually show, right, the calendar, which shows the available slots, right? This would have been, maybe 2-3 steps within the application, typically how it is traditionally developed, right? Okay. Now it's asking also, it's a conversation, right? That you're trying to have. Do you want to book that appointment slot? And I'll say yes. And then it shows me, okay, there are 2 of them that you can see, right? Which one would you want to do? Now, in a production application, I'm just showing you the Copilot experience. But the way I see it is that you will be able to continue the chat interface out here, but I should have that capability available, which would have been already built in to directly select this calendar slot and continue with my booking if I want to. But I'm going to show you the entire experience in Copilot, and that's what is an important element for speeding it up for a different experience altogether. So I choose a particular slot, right? And okay, you have chosen a slot. So you, instead of going book an appointment, I've already found a slot, but for who, right? And then win number. Now, this is another interesting one. I'm just typing a win number, right? And what you will need to implement using prompt flow and the plugin execution is take this win number, and actually change the entire application, right, to show the booking appointment. You saw the point is that if I would have done it traditionally, I would have gone through these 2, 3, 4 stages, right? This stage of date and slot entirely got taken care in my NLP experience, right? And I didn't need to fill up a form or anything else. Even this form is already filled in because I already have the win number, right? It's just that, like any AI solution, right, you will want to make sure that everything is fine. Something may want to change, something phone number has changed or anything else, but in this case, we'll just say confirm. Now, there are additional information about what kind of a service it is, what kind of a support staff is required, right? The system is already picking it up, right? And then you will be able to go through that. Now, you may want to again do something like this, is that system, you have built it into the application, right? The capability to provide a valet in this particular case, right? When you arrive at the service station, who takes your cards and who takes it to the back, right? But maybe you want to change the valet resource, right, to a different person, right? Now you could, in a typical application, click on this drop down, maybe search for that particular person. Here you already know I want to give it to John Matthew, and if I just say that, the application is going to go behind, make the change, and it's all based upon interface. Now, imagine something that we are not showing you out here. All of this could also be voice enabled. And that I see it as the next frontier for NLP based copilots is I should be able to do many of these activities using voice commands, like all of us are very used to using Siri and Alexa and all the other tools that are available. But I'm talking about your enterprise applications getting that same capabilities, right? Once you do that confirmation, you're able to confirm it. And of course, the entire application has been done, right? Entire workflow has been executed without you really wanting to do a lot of search, reducing the number of clicks. You are basically typing it as commands in natural language. You could also extend it to, again, it's a conversational platform, right? So once you have done this, is there anything else you want to do? Maybe you want to reschedule another capability that is there in the system, right? Reschedule test drive appointment. Now, in a typical thing, I'll go to test drive, I will do something out there. What just this 4 words of NLP does is, okay, tell me which customer you're talking about. And what it does is, just by the phone number, it changes the entire experience and it fetches the information automatically. It says, this is the current slot, right? What is the available slots? And you want to schedule that. I mean, think about the productivity gains this thing can provide. Think about the different experience that you're talking about. And I'm just going to sort of build through this. and show you the experience of simplifying this entire experience. So hopefully this gives you a good idea. I showed you the architecture, right? We won't have a time in a webinar, of course, to show you and walk through that. We are happy to be available, as Fuad also mentioned, from Microsoft side, for you to have more knowledge about the platform. We as a company, and if you have your phones handy, use the camera to scan this QR code. We provide, as a company, all these services to help you think through many of these solutions and how to actually build those solutions, right? And the one that I'm talking about out here is all about building the Copilot application, and we help you, sort of think through that. This comes to the end of the core of what we had planned. I'm going to hand it over back to Joe to see if, Joe, we have any questions. This is a introductory session about Copilot. A lot is coming in. There are other important topics around when you're building these solutions. How do you look at responsible AI, responsible generative AI, as I call it, right? And tools, ethics, and best practices. And I'm planning to do another webinar in the near future, where you'll be welcome to join me on talking about how do you make sure that once you're building those kinds of co-pilots or even other generative AI solutions, you're also taking care of responsible AI practices. Joe, do we have any questions that Fuad or I can answer?
Yeah, we do. Thanks, Vineet. Thanks, Fuad. We do have a couple questions. I'll take them in the order that we received them here in the chat. The first question is regarding, since Copilot depends on data that it has access to, the security and governance of the data completely lies with the data supplier, or Copilot has any additional logic intelligence to add anything to the security governance of the data that it gets. So I guess, sorry, I'm reading it as it was written. Do either one of you want to comment on security and governance as it relates to the Copilot frameworks?
Yeah, Fuad, if maybe from a Microsoft side, if you want to provide your perspective on the Copilot that will be built into the product itself, I can add a little bit later from my side on your custom Copilots. But that's the important point that I'll say for everybody in the audience is, when you refer to Copilot, I think there is a clarity that we have to have among ourselves is, are you talking about the Copilot that you are building, or the Copilots that are going to be part and parcel of the various products that Microsoft is going to have?
Yeah, and I want to maybe just make a general comment as a cloud company, and also as Microsoft building these Copilots as well. In either case, we're not using the data to further train these models. The data belongs to the customers. So, for example, let's say if we're talking about the custom Copilot, all the RBAC or the role-based access controls in place kind of follows the data and the governance and security as any other cloud-based application. So this is no different from the rest of the stack, I would say. We are adding the capabilities of generative AI as well, but I would say the main governance principles still are applicable, and it would be followed by any application that's being built. But I'm going to take a pause here. Looks like, Vineet, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, no, I think that is an important element, and if you look at the architecture, what I've not covered out here is that typically there will be lots of other services that you will be leveraging on that, and I think Geeta, who has asked the question, has clarified, right, in both cases, right? So the security is still the responsibility of wherever you are bringing the data from, right? Like your typical application, right? Your encryption for data at rest, for data in motion, right? You will need to take care using the underlying technology. So one is RBAC that you will implement, right? The second is encryption that you'll implement, right? Those are the technologies that are already available on the cloud platform for you to build that, and you will use the same thing in case of Copilot. Think of Copilot again, you're writing code like in a typical application, but you're working in a different architecture because you're using the foundational models, but all the other capabilities, let's say to build a UI UX, right, and to implement security, you will be using the underlying technologies that are available. So I see another question. What measures can our company take to ensure that its confidential data is not being shared with other Copilot users? I'm not sure, Alexander, I quite get that question from other Copilot users. If you mean the Copilot like it's available in Microsoft 365 or anything else, that goes back to the Microsoft responsible AI practices, that anything that is happening in your tenant, right, is your data, is secured in your environment. It's not being trained or not being used outside that tenant environment for any other user. That's true for OpenAI in general, that is running on Azure environment, and that's getting sort of replicated over to when you're building Copilot applications on top of that.
Great, thanks, Vineet. We did get a question. We had a question, Vineet, about use cases in terms of helping the life science clinical trial industry. Do you want to take that offline, or do you want to try to answer part of that now?
Yeah, so if I understand the question correctly, I'm also seeing that in the chat window. Ravindra, who is asking that question, do you mean specifically OpenAI or generative AI-based solutions, or more around Copilot itself? Very interestingly, we are actually working on a clinical trial industry application exactly for Copilot, because it can be quite a bit onerous to work through a lot of documents and a lot of data. We can certainly take it offline, specific to your scenario, on how a generative AI solution could help. But if you're also looking at more specifically on Copilot, you'll be happy to know I will have actually a good sort of a use case and a demo to show it to you for the healthcare industry that we are working on the using the Copilot approach. Let me actually see if I can bring it up while we are doing that. But yeah, if there are other questions that we can help answer.
Yeah, since we have a few other questions, Vineet and Fouad, while you're trying to pull that up, Vineet. One question, sure. Can I customize the M365 Copilot and branding to my needs? Well, either one of you want to take a stab at answering that? Did you hear my question?
Can you repeat the question, Joe?
Sure. Can I customize the M365 Copilot and branding to my needs?
The M365 Copilot currently, I'm not sure what the customization would mean, but it's gonna feed from the data that you have. Let's say if you have some data in your emails or in your SharePoints, and you are, let's say, searching for something and trying to write something based off of those, it's going to feed from that. So essentially, it's being customized using your own data. So I know we're all talking about the RAG architecture, or the retrieval augmented generation architecture. Essentially, the model itself, they are not being fine-tuned, but since they are using your own data to respond to your requests, it's being customized to your needs. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Fouad. I have another question here. What development language can be used to write Copilot applications?
Yeah, I can take that. I think as you're building custom Copilot, right, as I mentioned, a lot of it is going to be building using the Copilot Stack on the Microsoft platform, and think of any of the languages that are possible. But the primary ones would be some UI related, so React, Angular, right? Those will, of course, be required. But the plugin execution could be using, again, Python, Java, C#. All of those are going to be supported as the underlying platform, as I understand, and you'll be able to do that.
Thanks, Vineet. Another question
I see
here
another
from
question. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. You were gonna you want to answer
Yeah,
Alexander's
I saw
follow-up?
that question. So is it possible to set up a Copilot infrastructure within a private cloud? As of now, Alexander, my understanding, and Fuad, if you have any thoughts, is that this is a cloud-based platform and technology that is going to be enabled both in the Microsoft products and going to be available for you to build cloud-native applications. I'm not aware of any plans as of now for bringing it for an on-premises hosting of these capabilities.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment, Vineet. Like for the larger models, for let's say for the GPT-4 and GPT 3.5, don't think there are any plans. I just want to maybe make a caveat of, I guess the smaller models which are available, I've seen some groups of people maybe running them locally as well. So maybe that's another path, but I'm not sure what capabilities that would give you. But just because of the sheer size of these models, currently they are only offered on cloud, and I don't think there are any plans for private or on-prem offerings.
And I see another question here before. Go ahead, Vineet.
No, I was just agreeing to Fuad's point, and we can discuss it more, Alexander, offline if there are hybrid scenarios where I see that you could still implement some of those capabilities leveraging cloud and on-premises combination.
Yeah, Alexander, we have on the screen now email. I monitor that email regularly, marketing@Winwire. So if you didn't get your answered completely, feel free to reach out to us. I'll make sure Fuad and Vineet get an answer to you. Geeta has raised another question here. Can this be used efficiently for infrastructure management and monitoring kind of use cases?
I think the short answer is absolutely yes. Copilot is going to become very, very critical part of many of these kinds of functionalities where you're working with underlying data or operating on changing infrastructure, right? So as you know already, Gen AI based solutions can generate code. We talked about this in the last webinar. So if a Terraform script or an ARM template needs to be generated, but Copilot, we are talking about generation and then execution of that same Terraform template in an automated fashion. So the short answer is yes. Some of it will be again available as a part of the core platforms. Companies are going to have products in the market that are going to have these NLP-based interface to do many of these activities. You want to build some of your own, you will again use the Copilot Stack to build a lot of that.
Great. I see no other question here. Geeta, awesome. Would be interested to explore that path. Geeta, we'll follow up with you offline. Thank you. Unless there's any last second questions that get raised here, I want to start to wrap up. We want to thank everyone for joining. As I mentioned at the top, this is kind of the latest edition of an ongoing webinar series on Gen AI that we've been doing with Winwire and with Microsoft. If you weren't with us from the very beginning, please save the date, October 19th. Thank you, Vineet. We're going to, pick up this conversation around responsible generative AI. This has been a lot of the question and a lot of the feedback as Fuad and Vineet talked to customers throughout the summer. We've done a healthcare and AI roadshow with Microsoft, and this is one of the #1 questions. So we're going to double click and dive deep into the topic with our next webinar series. We will follow up with a recording of this in the next 24 to 48 hours. And again, we want to thank you for staying engaged and being with us throughout this conversation. Fuad, Vineet, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks everyone for joining.
I appreciate the partnership. Thanks, everyone. Glad that we were able to present to you, and let's stay in touch. Happy to continue these conversations. A lot of good questions and interactions. We'd love to continue that. Thanks.
Have a great day, everybody.